بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما، اللهم آمين. Before I proceed, inshallah, I just want to make sure that you can all hear me clearly. Can you all hear me? Is it clear? طيب, let's begin, inshallah. طيب, in today's lesson, inshallah ta'ala, we will be covering issues pertaining to al-Qadr, issues pertaining to the divine decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, or the pre-decree, and all of the sub-issues that are pertaining to this, from the levels of al-Qadr, the four types of, or the four levels of al-Qadr, and their evidences. So Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins by saying, وتؤمن الفرقة الناجية أهل السنة والجماعة بالقدر خيره وشره. He says that the saved sect, الفرقة الناجية, the saved sect, also known as أهل السنة والجماعة, believes in بالقدر, believes in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's good and it's evil. And then he says, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِالْقَدْرِ عَلَى دَرَجَتَيْن. And he says that al-imanu bil-qadr, believing in al-qadr, is two levels. على درجتين, or has two levels. كل درجة تتضمن شيئين. And each level contains two things. So here, Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins by mentioning issues pertaining to al-qadr. And al-qadr is the masdar of قدر يقدر أو قدرت الشيء. قدرت الشيء. It means to estimate something. Linguistically, it is to estimate. So if you say مثلا قدرت الشيء, if إذا أحط بمقداره, it means that when you estimate something, or you give a rough or an estimate to something, then this is linguistically al-qadr. This is what is meant linguistically with by the term al-qadr. And as for legislatively or Islamically, al-qadr هو تعلق علم الله بالكائنات وإرادته لها أزلا قبل وجودها. So al-qadr is Allah's knowledge of everything, and his decree of everything before its existence. So al-qadr is Allah Azza wa Jal's knowledge, his pre-knowledge, his knowledge of everything, his irad, and his knowledge of everything, and his recording of everything, before its existence. So there is nothing in existence. There is nothing in existence except that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed it. Whether that thing is an ant or an elephant or a human or a mountain or a tree, there is nothing in existence from objects that Allah Azza wa Jal, except that Allah has already decreed it before it came into existence. Similarly, there is no movement, nor there is any stillness that has ever occurred or will occur in the future, except that Allah Azza wa Jal has already pre-decreed it and knew of it before its occurrence. And here, Shaykh al-Islam, when he says that al-firqatu najiyah, that the saved sect, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, believe in al-Qadr, here what he's saying is that whoever does not believe in al-Qadr is not considered to be from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Whoever doesn't believe in the Qadr, or any aspects of the Qadr, or any level from the four levels of al-Qadr, then this person is not considered to be from Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And this is obviously the evidence for this is the hadith that you all know, the hadith of Jibreel, the hadith of the long hadith of Jibreel when he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam an al-iman, what is faith? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned the 6 articles of faith, and from those 6 articles of faith was al-iman bil qadr, believing in al-qadr, in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's khair and it's shar, it's evil and it's good and it's evil. And this belief, or believing in al-qadr, is the 6th pillar of al-Islam. It is the 6th pillar of al-Iman. Iman has 6 pillars, and one of those pillars is believing in al-qadr. Then he mentions that al-qadr is 2 levels. He mentions that al-qadr is 2 levels. So in each level, Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions 2 sub-levels, making the levels of al-qadr to be 4. So al-qadr has 4 levels. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions 2 levels, each level containing 2. So I'm going to mention now all 4 levels. Okay, all 4 levels. I'm going to mention them in a summarized version, and then inshallah ta'ala we will continue to read the matan and learn more about them inshallah. So al-ula, the first of those, the first daraja, or the first level of al-qadr is ilmullah al-azali, Allah's knowledge, Allah's all-encompassing knowledge, and that Allah Azza wa Jal knew everything, knows everything. He knows he knows everything that is in existence, and he knows everything that was ever in existence, and he knows everything that is in existence now, and he knows everything that will come into existence in the future. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has this is known as ilmullah al-azali, Allah's knowledge that has no beginning, Allah's knowledge that has no beginning and has no end. And from this knowledge, and this also includes Allah's knowledge of a'malul ibad, the actions of the servant, Allah's knowledge of the actions of the servant before they actually do it. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has knowledge of your actions before you do any of those actions. So mathalan, if right now you're intending to if let's say you're intending to go to the gym right now and work out physically, okay, but you haven't done it yet, Allah Azza wa Jalla is aware of this. And then if you change your mind at the last second, Allah also is aware of this, or was aware of this before you even changed your mind, that you would change your mind. If your intention, mathalan, is to go and read the Quran after this lesson, Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge of this, So this is the first level from the 4 levels of Al-Qadr. The second level is Kitabatullahi, or Kitabatu dhalika fil lawh al-mahfuz. It is Allah Azza wa Jal recording this in al-lawh al-mahfuz, in the preserved tablet. So Allah Azza wa Jal will record, or has recorded, everything that is in his knowledge, everything that will occur, okay, in al-lawh al-mahfuz, in the preserved tablet, before they occurred or before they happened. Third of these levels is mashi'atuhu ash-shamila an-nafidha, Allah's all-encompassing will, and all-encompassing and operative will, and Allah's the fact that he is capable of everything, okay, and he is capable of everything. So this is the third level, al-mashi'atu, or Allah Azza wa Jal recording everything, and his will, his Allah Azza wa Jal, his will, or his desire, يعني his will, Allah Azza wa Jal, his will, his all operative will, and his all-encompassing will. This is the third level of al-qadr, al-mashi'a, or Allah's will. The fourth level of al-qadr is al-khalq, that Allah Azza wa Jal created everything. Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. So these are the 4 levels of al-qadr. Let's now continue, inshallah ta'ala, and go to the next section with regards to al-qadr. So he says, فالدرجة الأولى. So Shaykh al-Islam, he says, فالدرجة الأولى, the first level, and in this level, he's going to mention two sub-levels. The first of these is ilmullah, Allah's knowledge, and the second is al-kitaba, Allah's recording of his knowledge. So he's going to mention both here. So he says, الدرجة الأولى الإيمان بأن الله تعالى عليم بما الخلق عاملون. To believe that Allah Azza wa Jalla has knowledge of what the creation will do. بعلمه القديم الذي هو موصوف به أزلا وأبدا. Allah, because يعني he has knowledge of this, because Allah Azza wa Jalla, he has a knowledge, and his knowledge has two attributes. Allah's knowledge has two very important attributes that you as a student of knowledge need to know. أزلا وأبدا, his knowledge has no beginning, وأبدا, his knowledge has no end. يعني أزلا, you're going to read this term or this word, you'll come across it in many of the books of Al-Aqidah. There is no evidence for this word in the nusus. The ma'na, the meaning is correct, but there is no, when I say there's no evidence, I mean the word itself has not been used. The word azalan has not been used in the Quran and the Sunnah. But what has been used in the Quran and Sunnah is al-awwal. Allah Azza wa Jalla huwa al-awwal falaysa qablahu shay. Huwa al-awwal falaysa qablahu shay is the meaning of azalan. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, his knowledge is azaliyun. Azaliyun means la bidayata lahu. He has no beginning. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, his knowledge has no beginning, just like he himself has no beginning. Similarly, abadan is Allah Azza wa Jal, his knowledge has no end. And the evidence for al-azal wal-abad, these two terms in the Quran, is huwa al-awwal falaysa, is the Prophet, is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma anta al-awwal falaysa qablaka shay, wa anta al-akhiru falaysa ba'daka shay. Oh Allah, you are the first, and there is nothing that preceded you. And you are the last, and there is nothing that comes after you. So azalan wa abadan are terms or words that were generally invented by the philosophers, but the meanings are correct. And the reason why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala uses these words sometimes in his works, لِإِقَامَةِ الْحُجَّةِ عَلَى هَؤُلَاء, to establish the proof against these people, because he's using their very words to refute their false ideologies and their false principles. طيب. Then he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, وَعَلِمَ جَمِيعَ أَحْوَالِهِمْ. So he's still explaining the first martaba, or the first sub-level, which is al-ilm. وَعَلِمَ جَمِيعَ أَحْوَالِهِمْ. And Allah has knowledge of all of their situations, all of their situations. So every single human being and his situation, Allah is aware of it. Every single makhlooq, every creation, whether it's an animate or an inanimate object, whether it's alive or dead, okay? Allah Azza wa Jal knows of its intimate situation. من الطاعات والمعاصي. وعلم جميع أحوالهم من الطاعات والمعاصي والأرزاق والآجال. Allah Azza wa Jal knows their situation, whether they are engrossed in obedience or whether they are engrossed in disobedience. He knows of their arzaq, he knows of their sustenance, he knows of their time span, the time span that is how long they will be alive on this earth. That's the first. ثم كتب الله. Then he moves to the second sub-level, which is al-kitaba. And then after this, after Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge of all of this, كتب الله في اللوح المحفوظ مقادير الخلق. Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge. He has عفوا. He has recorded everything. He has recorded مقادير الخلق, the creation, the maqadir. He has recorded the maqadir, the decree of the creation in Allah al-Mahfuz, in the preserved tablet. In the preserved tablet. فأول ما خلق الله القلم قال له اكتب. So when Allah Azza wa Jal first, when Allah Azza wa Jal, when he created the pen, when Allah Azza wa Jal, he created the pen, the first thing he said to the pen was uktub, record. The pen said, Ma aktubu, what should I write? So this is in reference to the hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood, the hadith of Ubad ibn Samit radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in Sunan Abi Dawood. So he's just now mentioning the hadith. He doesn't actually tell you that this is a hadith here, But obviously, this is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he's mentioning something that can only be known from the Sunnah, from the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is an actual hadith. So قال له اكتب. So Allah first said to the pen, اكتب, record. قال ما أكتب, and then the pen responded by saying, what should I record? قال Allah Azza wa Jalla said, اكتب ما هو كائن إلى يوم القيامة. Record everything that will occur until يوم القيامة. Record everything that will happen until يوم القيامة. فما أصاب الإنسان لم يكن ليخطئه. Here, this term here, فما أصاب, these words here are the words of the راوي الحديث, the narrator of the hadith, عبادة بن الصامت رضي الله تعالى عنه, who said, فما أصاب الإنسان لم يكن ليخطئه. Whatever وفما أصاب الإنسان, whatever has been decreed from calamities to occur and to happen to that person, لم يكن ليخطئه, would never have passed him by. وما أخطأه لم يكن ليصيبه. فما أصاب الإنسان عفوا فما أصاب الإنسان, whatever has been decreed, rather, whatever has been decreed for that person will never pass him by without it happening to him or her. وما أخطأه لم يكن ليصيبه, and whatever has passed them by, okay, whatever they've missed, لم يكن ليصيبه, that it was never decreed for it to happen to them anyway. So if, for example, you have been granted you've been given a reward, or you've been given a blessing, like for example, Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed you with offspring, with a child, then that child has been decreed, and this was in your rizq. Allah had decreed this, and you would have always had this child. And if you were alive on this earth and you do not have any children, then that was the decree of Allah Azza wa Jalla, so you have to accept it. And whatever passed you by, so if you just, mathalan, if you missed out on something on this earth, whatever it may be, then it was never ordained anyway, it was never decreed for you. جفت الأقلام وطويت الصحف. يعني here, this is in reference to the hadith of at-Tirmidhi, from the hadith of Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says يعني جفت أو جفت الأقلام عن وطوية الصحف, يعني the pens have been lifted and the scrolls have been closed, or the scrolls have been يعني the scrolls have been closed, يعني نعم. كما قال تعالى, and then he mentions, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, ألم تعلم أن الله يعلم ما في السماء والأرض إن ذلك في كتاب إن ذلك على الله يسير. So this here, المرتبة يعني المرتبة الأولى here, when he says the first martaba here, is he's referring to al-imanu, as we mentioned, بعلم الله, Allah's knowledge of Allah, يعني believing in Allah's knowledge in that which is in existence, al-mawjudat, wal-ma'dumat, and that which is not in existence. And this knowledge is considered to be a sifa dhatiyya. It is an attribute that is connected to Allah's essence, not his actions. It is an attribute that is connected to Allah's essence. Allah Azza wa Jal always had this attribute. He always had knowledge. His knowledge had no beginning, and he will always have knowledge, and his knowledge has no end. Then al-martabatu thaniya, martabatu al-kitaba, just to recap, and this is martaba, it is that Allah Azza wa Jal, to believe that Allah Azza wa Jal has recorded everything in al-lawh al-mahfuz. Allah Azza wa Jal has recorded everything in al-lawh al-mahfuz, in the preserved tablet. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, as يعني hadith of Ubadah ibn Samit radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول. And there's a very important point here that you all need to understand, and it is that this hadith, أول ما خلق الله القلم, the meaning of the hadith differs, or the meaning of the hadith is subject to the actual i'rab of the words in the hadith. So the meaning of the hadith changes, changes in accordance to the i'rab and to the linguistic يعني the linguistic terminology in the hadith. So to make it more clearer for you, the hadith أول is it يعني أول or أول. يعني if we say there are two narrations, the first narration of the hadith is أول ما خلق الله القلم. يعني أول بنصب اللام بنصب أول and بنصب القلم. So أول ما خلق الله القلم فقال له اكتب. So if we say أول, okay, ما خلق الله القلم, then that's one sentence. That's considered ماذا? One sentence. And the meaning of the hadith, if that's the i'rab, if we put fatha after أول and we put fatha in al-qalama, at the end of al-qalama, يعني fatha on the meme in al-qalama and fatha on the lam in awwala, if we do this, then the meaning of the hadith is that when Allah Azza wa Jal first created the pen, he said uktub, write. يعني عند أول خلق القلم, when Allah first created the pen, he said ماذا? uktub, record. Okay? But that's one narration. There is a narration that says أول ما خلق الله القلم. There is another narration with that puts a dhamma on أول and dhamma on القلم. So in this narration, the hadith says أول ما خلق الله القلم. Okay, so in this regard, أول ما خلق الله القلم is one sentence, and the second sentence قال له اكتب. That's the second sentence. طيب? So the meaning of the hadith, if we put a dhamma on awwalu and we put a dhamma on al-qalamu, means that when Allah, the first thing that Allah Azza wa Jal created is the pen. The first thing that Allah Azza wa Jal created is the pen, and then He said to it, record. You see the difference in meaning here. So the meaning differs. Okay, يعني يختلف المعنى باختلاف الإعراب. So the meaning differs by يعني looking at the إعراب of the actual hadith. So the first meaning is when Allah first created the pen, He said to it, write. Okay, that's one sentence. He said to it, write. When Allah first created the pen, He said to it, write. That's one sentence. أول ما خلق الله القلم قال له اكتب. And this meaning, we use this meaning if we say أول, there's a fatha in أول, we put a fatha in أول and fatha in al-qalama. The second meaning, there's two sentences. أول ما خلق الله القلم قال له اكتب, sentence 2. أول ما خلق الله القلم الجملة الأولى, sentence 1. قال له اكتب, sentence 2. And the meaning of the hadith, if we make the i'rab of أول مضموم, or we put dhamma in أول and dhamma in al-qalam, is that the first thing that Allah created from the creation is the pen. And then He said to it, uktub, record. And then He said to it, ماذا? uktub, record. طيب. وقوله, so this is just what you need to know now. Don't worry about which is one is rajih. Is the pen the first thing that what was the first thing that was created? Was it the pen? Some of you may say it's the arsh, and depending on another narration, but I don't want to get into that now. I want you to understand the matan. I want you to understand the two i'rabs and what they mean. Don't worry about the rajih, which is the preferred opinion or not. Okay? وقوله فما أصاب الإنسان لم يكن ليخطئ. This is as mentioned, the narration of Ubadah ibn Samit رضي الله تعالى عنه, the rawi of the hadith. Then the Shaykh رحمه الله تعالى mentions the evidences from the Quran. قوله تعالى ألم تعلم أن الله يعلم ما في السماء والأرض. هذا دليل العلم. هذا دليل المرتبة الأولى وهي العلم. So this is the evidence for the first martaba, the first level, which is al-ilmu, that Allah Azza wa Jal has يعني all-encompassing knowledge. And the proof is ألم تعلم, do you not know أن الله يعلم, that Allah has knowledge of everything in the sama and everything in the al-ard. And the second And the evidence for al-kitaba, the evidence for the second martaba is also in the ayah. Inna dhalika fi kitab. Indeed, all of the knowledge, this thing, يعني Allah's knowledge of يعني Allah's knowledge of what will happen, Allah's knowledge of the makhluqat, of the creation, is fi kitab, in a book, recorded in a book. Right? Jamil. So that's the evidence for the first two levels. That's the evidence for the first two levels. And then he mentioned and then he used the evidence ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها. يعني ما أصاب من مصيبة. No مصيبة, no calamity strikes you in the earth from droughts and from يعني from storms and tornadoes and all of the calamities that occur, and يعني all of these things. ولا في أنفسكم, no musiba occurs and happens to you on this earth, or musiba or calamity connected to you, to yourselves, يعني from sickness and death and poverty, إلا في كتاب, except that has been recorded in a book. طيب, من قبل أن نبرأها, before we created it. Before ماذا? We created you. Before we created anything. طيب, إن ذلك على الله يسير. And then the Shaykh رحمه الله تعالى, he mentions the types of al-qadr with regards to who or when they occur, and who they occur, or who they happen to. So he says, وهذا التقدير التابع لعلمه سبحانه يكون في مواضع جملة وتفصيلا. So this taqdeer, this decree that is connected to Allah's knowledge, the decree that is connected to Allah's knowledge. So now he's talking about علم الله. So هذه المسألة تتفرع عن علم الله. So we're talking about the types of decrees that are connected to Allah's knowledge. Okay, he says some of these decrees are jumlatan, are general, and some of them are specific. Some of these decrees are general, okay, and some of them are ماذا? Specific. And then he goes on to explain, and he says فقد كتب في اللوح المحفوظ ما شاء, because Allah, he recorded in the preserved tablet whatever he wills, everything he has willed, and everything he will. Okay, and then he says وإذا خلق جسد الجنين قبل نفخ الروح فيه بعث إليه ملكا. When Allah creates the body of the embryo, before he breathes life into it, he sends to this embryo a malak, an angel. And then فيؤمر بأربع كلمات, and this angel is commanded to do four things. فيقال له, it is said to him, اكتب رزقه, يعني write and record the sustenance, everything that this embryo will occur. And الرزق, the meaning of الرزق is ما ينفع. So rizq, my brothers and sisters, doesn't just mean everything that you consume with your mouth, food and drink. Rizq means كل ما ينفعك, anything that is of benefit to you is rizq. So your health is rizq, food that you eat is rizq because it's benefit to you. Okay, children are rizq, anything that is of benefit to you in this life and the next is considered rizq. So the angel will record the rizq and the sustenance and everything that is of benefit to this embryo, وأجله, and everything, and he will record how long this embryo, this child, will live on the earth, وعمله, and what type of actions will they do on the earth, وشقي أو سعيد, will they be a good or a bad person. All of this will be recorded. ونحو ذلك. فهذا التقدير, he says, this decree, يعني the decree, meaning هذا هنا إشارة إلى علم الله, this تقدير, meaning this, the decree or the belief in Allah's knowledge, قد كان ينكره غلاة القدرية. The غلاة القدرية, the extreme قدرية, would disbelieve in it and reject it قديما. ومنكروه اليوم قليل, and as for today, those who reject it are few. So here he mentions أن التقدير نوعان. So there are two types of taqdir. There are two types of decrees connected to the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is تقدير عام, a general decree, okay? And this decree encompasses every single creation, every creation, okay? Encompasses everything that Allah has created, okay? And this is the decree that Allah records, mada, in the preserved tablet. And the second type of decree, which is taqdir khas, the specific decree, this decree is subcategorized or subdivided into three. So the specific decree is divided into three categories. Number one, taqdir umri, okay? Taqdir umri, or the decree connected to the lifespan of a person or of a thing. The decree of life, or the decree connected to a lifespan, or connected to the lifespan of the person. Number two, taqdir hawli, the yearly decree, the yearly decree. And the number three, taqdir yawmi, the daily decree, the daily decree. So the first decree, taqdir umri, we can say it is the decree of the lifetime of the person. The second is the yearly decree, and the third is the daily decree. Each of these types of decrees has an evidence in the Quran and in the Sunnah. Naam. So the first decree, from the specific decrees, is a taqdir al-umri, and this is mentioned in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, when he mentions the stages of the embryo, when the embryo obviously is created in the womb of its mother, and that he mentions in this hadith that the angel will be commanded to record his rizq, his ajal, his amal, his sustenance, his lifespan, his actions, and whether he's a good or a bad person. Okay, so this is the taqdir al-umri. So this decree happens once for every single person. So when the person is in his or her mother's womb, this decree will happen in the mother's womb. And this specific decree, doesn't contradict the general decree, which was Allah's decree of everything before the person was actually created. And that is the decree that is that is a decree that is recorded in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, in the preserved tablet. The second specific decree is a taqdir al-hawli, the yearly decree, and this decree occurs in Laylatul Qadr every year. This decree occurs in Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, فيها يفرق كل أمر حكيم. In this night, every wise decree or decision is made. Every wise decree is made. So this is the yearly decree that happens once in Laylatul Qadr, once a year. So in this decree, Allah Azza wa Jalla decrees everything that will happen for that year. Everything that will happen from Laylatul Qadr to the next Laylatul Qadr. And the third is Taqdir Yawmi, or the daily decree. And this is the daily decree, and this is what Allah Azza wa Jalla decrees on that will happen on that day, from the death of a person, the birth of another person, from the honor, from basically the honor of a person being honored, and another person being humiliated. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. In every day, Allah Azza wa Jal is in a decree or decreeing something. طيب. Naam. So this decree, Shaykh al-Islam, he says that this decree, the decree of knowledge, whether Allah Azza wa Jal is whether Allah Azza wa Jal is the decree that Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge, and that Allah Azza wa Jal has a general there's a general type and a specific type. This decree was a decree, or the qadr, it was rejected by Ghulatul Qadariyah. So the Ghulatul Qadariyah in the time of Abdullah ibn Umar, in the time of the Sahaba, the extreme Qadariyah, they disbelieved in this decree, and they said that Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal, although they said that although Allah commands and prohibits, He doesn't know who will fulfill His commands and who will disobey. Okay, so they rejected that fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge. And this is kufr. And the Sahaba kafaruhum. The Sahaba made takfir of them. So that type of decree, that type of those ghulat al-qadariyah have inqaradu. They are not, generally speaking, they are not in existence today. But there is the qadariyah. There is another type of qadariyah. They are the ones that are still, and they're the ones that reject the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla has knowledge of af'alul ibad, has knowledge of the actions of the servant, and they exist today. They reject the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla has knowledge of the actions of the servant, and they are in existence today. Jamil. نعم. Then الدرجة الثانية. Then he mentions the second level. الدرجة الثانية وما تتضمنه. He mentions the second level, and in this second level, he will mention the two other levels of al-qadr, which is al-mashi'a, Allah's will, and al-khalq, Allah's creation. So he says, وأما الدرجة الثانية فهي مشيئة الله النافذة. As for the second level, it is Allah's operative mashi'a. He's Allah's operative will. وقدرته الشاملة, and his power, his all-encompassing power. وهو الإيمان بأن ما شاء الله كان, and this is to believe that whatever Allah Azza wa Jalla has willed will occur. وما لم يشأ لم يكن, and whatever He has not willed will not occur. وأنه ما في السماوات وما في الأرض, and that there is nothing in the heavens and the earth, من حركة, from movement, ولا سكون, or from stillness, إلا, except that it occurs بمشيئة الله سبحانه, with the will of Allah, because of the will of Allah. لا يكون في ملكه ما لا يريد. There is nothing in His dominion or in His kingdom, except there is nothing that occurs in His kingdom except ما لا يريد, except that which He has willed. وأنه سبحانه على كل شيء قدير, that Allah Azza wa Jal, the most perfect, He has power over everything. من الموجودات, from those things that are in existence, والمعدومات, and those things that are not in existence. فما من مخلوق في الأرض ولا في السماء إلا الله خالقه سبحانه. Okay, and then now he's going to mention the fourth and final category, which is al-khalq. He says, فما من مخلوق, there is no creation in the heavens and in the earth except that Allah Azza wa Jal created it. لا خالق غيره ولا رب سواه. There is no other creator and there is no other Rabb. نعم. So here, the third level is mashi'atullah nafida. So Allah's mashi'a, Allah's will, is all-encompassing. Has these two descriptions. It is all-encompassing and it is operative. It is operative, meaning that it is madhiya. It will happen. When Allah Azza wa Jal wills something, there is no other will that can supersede His will, and that His will supersedes everything. Okay. Then he says, so this will, he goes on to explain that it is to believe أن ما شاء الله كان, that Allah Azza wa Jal, whatever Allah has willed will occur, and whatever He has not willed will not occur. So it's a simple principle. Whatever Allah wills will happen. Whatever Allah Azza wa Jal has not willed will not occur. And then he goes on to explain وأنه ما في السماوات من حركة ولا سكون إلا بمشيئة الله, and that there is nothing in the heavens and in the earth from movement. Anything that moves, okay, it is because Allah willed it to move. And anything that hasn't moved and is completely still, it is because Allah Azza wa Jal decreed it to be still. Okay, and that nothing happens in His dominion, in His kingdom, okay, except that Allah has willed it, and nothing doesn't happen except that Allah didn't will it to happen. Okay. And then he says, فَمَا مِن مَخْلُوق. So that's the third category, al-mashi'a. The fourth category is al-khalq wal-ijad. Allah Azza wa Jal created everything and brought it into existence. فَمَا مِن مَخْلُوقٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَّا اللَّهُ خَالِقُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ. So this is the fourth level, وهي مرتبة الخلق والإيجاد. So everything other than Allah is مخلوق. وكل ما سوى الله مخلوق. Okay? كل ما سوى الله مخلوق. Everything, so you have al-khaliq, Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator is Allah. And everything other than Allah is created. Okay? And the actions of the servant, whether they are good or they are bad, was created by Allah Azza wa Jal, but the servants have a choice, and they are the ones that are carrying out these actions. They are the ones that are physically doing these actions, but these actions are created by Allah Azza wa Jal, and they would not have happened if Allah Azza wa Jal did not will them. So when the Shaykh Rahimahullah Ta'ala now has explained to you the 4 pillars of Al-Qadr, okay, the next, he's going to now mention 3 issues, ثلاث مسائل. Okay, these 3 issues are connected to what we have just studied. So everything we've just learned today is considered an asl and a foundation. So you have to believe in it. And once you've digested it and understood it properly and believed in it, then and only then are you able to respond to the shubuhat and the misconceptions of those deviant groups from the Qadariyya and the Jabariyya who disbelieve in in Al-Qadr or some of the aspects of Al-Qadr. طيب? So now, after this, in next week, inshallah ta'ala, next week's lesson, we're going to cover 3 issues, 3 very important issues. Al-Mas'alatul Ula, the first issue that we're going to cover, inshallah, is أنه لا تعارض بين القدر والشرع. That there is no contradiction between the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, the 4 levels of decree. There's no contradiction between that and Allah's legislation and Allah's Sharia. Okay, that's number 1. We're going to delve more deeper into that inshallah ta'ala next week. Number 2, the second issue we're going to learn is لا تعارض بين تقدير الله وقوع المعاصي وبغضه لها. There is no contradiction between Allah's decree of the occurrence or the existence of sins and his hatred for sins. So there's no decree between the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed sins to occur and the fact that Allah hates those sins. There's no contradiction between the two. And number 3, the third mas'ala is there is no تعارض لا تعارض بين تقدير الله لأفعال العباد وكونهم يفعلونها باختيارهم. There is no contradiction between Allah's decree of the actions of the servant and the fact that the servants carry out these actions by choice. So there's no decree between the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal, He decreed the actions of the servant and the fact that the servants carry out these actions by choice. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to stop here, and next week bi'idhnillah ta'ala we will continue and learn and study these lessons and these issues. So I advise you to recap and revise today's lesson thoroughly, inshallah ta'ala, so that when you come to the next lesson, we can carry on and you'll be able to understand those those issues, inshallah ta'ala, from more intimately and deeply, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Any questions? Ikhwani wa akhawati, make sure you have your questions ready. Okay? Have your questions ready. As soon as I finish the lesson, the questions should be typed up and ready to go. All right? All right, Barak. I don't see any questions here, so I assume that everyone, inshallah ta'ala, has understood today's lesson. Barakallahu feekum. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. وقل رب زدني